Welcome to the Diary of the Pan-African Preacher. There is an African proverb that says, if beards signified intelligence, the goat would have been a genius. Continuing where I left off last week, I believe that the challenge to the African church, whether in the diaspora or on the African continent, is to recognize that the prophetic tradition identified in the biblical text now emanates beyond the ecclesiastical walls. In other words, outside of the church. Today's prophetic questions are being raised by young people, women, academics, artists, social movements, and communities living on the margins. Take, for example, the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement. That movement was a massive student-led protest campaign that began in October 2015 across South Africa. The students were not simply protesting about university fees. They were asking deeper questions. Who has access to knowledge? Whose history is taught? Whose knowledge is considered legitimate? What does decolonization mean? And what does liberation mean when political freedom has not necessarily produced economic and educational justice? The church should not simply ask whether such protests are disruptive. It should go on to ask, what are these young people teaching us about the society we have created? This brings me to one of the most important convictions behind my own work in Pan-African public theology. And perhaps this is the challenge before the African church today. We do not need to manufacture a new prophetic tradition. We need to recover one that is already deeply embedded in our history. Kwame Nkrumah, Steve Biko, Desmond Tutu, Alan Bosak, and countless African women and men of faith understood that Christianity could not be separated from the struggle for human dignity. The church does not need to become partisans, but it does need to become prophetic. There is a difference. Being partisans means belonging to a political side. Being prophetic means holding every side accountable to justice. And perhaps the church's task today is not simply to speak to movements like the hashtag Fees Must Fall. Perhaps it is first to listen to them, to become a community of discernment. Pan-African public theology asks us to listen for what God may be saying through African experience, African struggle, African memory, and African aspirations. Ashe.